The White House tonight is denying reports a staff shakeup is in the works, according to the Wall Street Journal. President Trump is considering ousting both White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus and Chief Strategist Stephen Bannon. But Deputy Press Secretary Lindsay Walters says, quote, "The only thing we are shaking up is the way Washington operates." Well, we'll see. Joining me now to discuss the president's big week, his China summit, the Syrian airstrikes, and much, much more, RNC National Committeeman and former chairman of the Republican Lawyers Association, Randy Evans, and Republican strategist, veteran of 10 presidential campaigns, the Dean, Ed Rollins. Good to have you both here.
Randy, how are you?
Good to see you, Lou.
Are we going to get through?
Yeah,
we're starting with pleasantries tonight. I
haven't seen him in a long time.
Well, you want me to just sort of wait here until you'll catch up? I mean,
you got nothing else to talk about today.
I'm going to start with you, Randy, now that we know how you're doing. The president, how's he doing?
Oh, he had a wonderful winning week. I mean, you've got the confirmation of Associate Justice Gorsuch. That's a huge deal. That will make an enormous difference immediately. Effective next Friday, he'll be voting on which cases to grant review. You've got the attack in Syria, which proves he means what he says and he says what he means, and he leads from the front. No doubt about where his head is. And then finally to end with the Chinese delegation leading and inviting him to China to continue the negotiations. I think if you're Russia, you got to be thinking long and hard about what this president stands for.
Yeah, if you're Russia, if you're Xi, if you're a lot of people, including the Ayatollah Khamenei, you've got to be thinking in Iran. It's interesting to me, Ed, Iran has sort of receded to the background here in the midst of what has been a tumultuous and absolutely triumphant week for President Trump.
He's had a fabulous week, and I think the statement that he made last night in the middle of his Chinese dinner, that if you mess with us or mess with people that are innocent, we're not Obama, we're going to take a challenge. And when you fire 60 missiles and you hit with 59 of them, I think that's a pretty good record within 60 seconds. So I think the message to both China on North Korea and to the Iranians and to the Russians, the thing I'm most pleased is it puts a little distance between him and Putin at this point in time, which we need to have.
The United Nations, talking with Ambassador Bolton, and as you both know, he's a former ambassador to the United Nations. He didn't want to answer whether the UN is now completely irrelevant and should be consigned to the dustbin of history. But it has operated as an oppositional force to U.S. foreign policy for decades. It wasn't consulted by this president. He moved forward, and that United Nations has stood pat, static, and to me, tragically so, on the issue of Syria in particular here tonight. Randy, why do we tolerate it?
Well, we should. And I think it would make a new great Trump hotel right there in New York City, is to take this UN building and convert it. Look what he did in Washington, D.C. to a government post office. Imagine what he could do with that real estate.
Well, you know, just about every piece of real estate, as best I could discern, Ed, given Randy's suggestion here. I mean, it looks better with a Trump sign on it, so what are we thinking?
I just think it would be better suited to sit in Geneva. I think at the end of the day here, we give it a lot more attention than we normally would if it wasn't right here in our neighborhood. I don't think they have been good supporters of us, and we've been one of their biggest financial backers and what have you for many, many years. I don't think the American public would care one iota if it basically moved out, and those that did can all move out with them.
You know, Lou, you do have to agree. You do have to agree that Ambassador Nikki Haley stepped forward and took charge. She really has been very impressive this week. I think she's earned a lot of stripes on those sleeves.
I think, by the way, from the moment she stepped into the post, she has acquitted herself extraordinarily well. I want to turn, if we may, to Gorsuch. The judge, this was a bitter, long battle. It's 1 year of what is a long battle over the judiciary between these two parties, going back 30 years now to Robert Bork. But now the Democrats went so low and stayed in the muck for so long and were utterly irrational and obstinate and thuggish throughout. What damage would you judge they've done to themselves?
Well, it looks like to me they made themselves clearly partisan. Remember, it was bipartisan support that confirmed Associate Justice Gorsuch. He's now going to sit and decide. He's got a very important case on April 19th, right out of the box, a case where in the state of Missouri, religious elementary schools were denied materials to improve the safety of their playgrounds simply because they're religious. It's absurd, but he'll break those 4-4 ties. They'll become early and often. Ed,
your sense of the politics of this, have we moved into an even darker no man's land where when it turns to partisan politics?
Well, I think so, and I think it's been building and building and building. And one of the foolishness of the filibuster is it means the minority gets to rule the Senate, and that's not the intention of our forefathers. One great thing about the judge being appointed today or be sworn in next week is we now have 4 or 5 really young, dynamic judges that are going to be on that court for a long period of time. And Thomas, who's been there the longest, basically is one of the great writers of the court. He'll be there another 20 years. So my sense, Roberts, Alito, Gorsuch, and whoever else we get is just going to give us some great stability, and the Constitution is going to stand up as it always should have.
Now, I had the privilege of talking with Justice Thomas for a few moments last week. The man is vigorous. He is smart as a whip, and his presence on that court has been extraordinary.
Well, he's one of the great writers, and you read the court decisions that he's written. They're fabulous.
All right. We're going to turn very quickly here. I know we're out of time, but I want to ask you both about this because Fox News is reporting Susan, and I want to quote this, Susan Rice most likely, quote, left a very extensive paper trail of unmasking requests related to members of the Trump transition team. What is your judgment, Randy, as to whether or not she will be held accountable?
I think she'll take the Fifth Amendment. I think at the end of the day, when rubber meets road, she's not going to be able to answer those questions because there is no justifiable excuse for what she did.
No excuse, but also no accountability. Is that right?
That's exactly right. No accountability, but there will be responsibility in the end.
I think the Attorney General ought to basically hand this off to the FBI and say do a full investigation and come forth with documents that basically we can indict her.
Yeah, and I think we all should be straightforward about the experience of these congressional investigations over the course of throughout certainly the Obama administration. They have led to nothing. They have been lacking in producing results that are substantive or meaningful. And I think that the leadership of Congress and the Senate should take note of that fact and not waste either taxpayer dollars or the time of citizens. The FBI sounds like a very good idea to me.
Absolutely.
Randy Evans, Ed Rollins, thank you both.